Today, the U.S. Supreme Court handed down two long-awaited decisions. In one, they ruled in favor of a Christian web designer in Colorado who challenged a state law saying it is against her religious beliefs to create wedding websites for same-sex couples, and that Colorado's law violates her right to free speech.
And in a very closely watched case, the justices shot down President Biden's debt forgiveness plan that would have forgiven up to $20,000 per person. In a 6-3 ruling, they said this was beyond the president's authority.
Here to break this down, our former corporation counsel for the city of Detroit, now managing partner at the Miller law firm, Butch Hollowell, and Republican political consultant Jamie Roe. Thank you both for joining us.
You're welcome.
So I'd like to start with both of your opinions. Tell me, were you surprised that the Supreme Court shut down the president's forgiveness plan?
This is an extreme, out of control Supreme Court. Today's Gallup poll said that 60% of Americans have lost confidence in the U.S. Supreme Court. Historically, it's not just because of radical decisions like this, but they're immersed in all kinds of ethical problems with justices taking hundreds of thousands of dollars of private gifts and money, and so nothing really surprises people. Even the leading Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee, like Senator Lindsey Graham, have said it's time for ethics reform. The decision that they made today as it relates to the debt relief program was absolutely not founded. And let me read to you what the section says. 20 U.S.C. section 1098 gave the Secretary of Education, quote, "The Secretary has the power to waive or modify loan terms in instances where there is an emergency." Under the Trump administration, the Secretary did that. It was followed by the Secretary in the Biden administration. The ruling today went far beyond the authority that the Supreme Court has, is said by Justice Kagan, and so it's just a really abysmal thing for 43 million Americans who were looking for that relief, who, by the way, many got other kinds of relief during COVID. But I believe that the president will go back at it. And again, this is a Supreme Court that's radical and out of control.
All right.
Your
And Jamie?
response?
There's so much to respond to there. It's unbelievable. First of all, the relief that other people got during COVID was all passed by Congress. Nancy Pelosi herself, it was not passed.
The HEROES Pact.
The HEROES Act was done in the early 2000s.
Was passed 20 years ago by Congress.
To give loan relief to soldiers who were activated to go fight against Al-Qaeda during the national emergency.
Has the power to waive or modify loan terms. That's what it says.
The fact of the matter is, Nancy Pelosi herself
You
said,
can say the name. Here's what the statute says.
I didn't interrupt.
The
Sure, let's hear the rest of what you
Secretary
have to
has the
say.
power to waive or modify loan terms.
I didn't interrupt him. Fact of the matter is, Nancy Pelosi herself in 2021 said that the president did not have the authority to eliminate student debt, that could only be accomplished through an act of Congress. Now, I agree with Nancy Pelosi on very few things, but I do agree with her on that. Fact of the matter is that is spending money the president did not have the authority to spend. Number two, the winner there are American taxpayers. Nobody forced anybody to sign on to a student loan. Nobody. And the fact of the matter is, if they had support in Congress, the Democrats had complete control of Congress between 2021 and the election in 2022. They could have passed this if they had wanted to, and they did not. So what does that tell you? There was not the support to do it. In fact, the Congress of the United States passed a bill to repeal any authority the president would have to forgive debt, and President Biden vetoed that. Fact of the matter is, the Supreme Court on the student loan debt issue did the exact right thing. Now, if Congress believes that that is the appropriate policy, Congress needs to step up and take the action and eliminate the debt. They could absolutely do it, and the justices said that today in their opinion. I think what it was a ruling for the rule of law and the upholding of the separation of powers within our Constitution.
At a press conference today, Biden insisted that he's going to keep fighting this and find another way. What is that other way to help maybe get this through in another capacity?
There's the Education Act, which is another path, but I want to just say, your viewers deserve the facts. You did not hear that a moment ago. Congress acted. Under 20 U.S.C. section 1098, it gave the Secretary of Education the power to waive or modify loan terms.
All right, let's talk about the political implications of this, because there is some debate over that 2003 law. Some of the architects of the law have said, no, it didn't apply in this situation. But how does this play politically? Does this help Biden or hurt him more? Because he didn't keep a promise, but he did try. So how does that play out going to 2024?
He did keep a promise. It's the Supreme Court that not only ignored the executive branch, not only ignored the legislative branch, they took a case, as Justice Kagan said, that they had no business in taking. There was no case or controversy there. This is part of the extreme portion of this Supreme Court, which is why Americans have now historically lost confidence in their ability to be fair or to dispense justice. It's a low point in the history of the United States Supreme Court.
Is this tough for Republicans going forward, though, being on the opposite side of this?
Absolutely not. Quite honestly, 80% of this country, over 80% of this country has no student debt, none. Okay, I used to have student debt, and guess what? I paid my loans back.
The cost of college has gone up significantly in recent years. We do have to acknowledge that.
As a father of a daughter who just graduated from college and one who's heading there this fall, I understand very well. And nobody forced us to take out the loans that we took out, and we will repay every penny ourselves.
Nobody forced us to undergo COVID either, and because of the emergency, the HEROES Act then kicks into place and gives the Secretary that authority. That's why it was on such very solid ground. This was a political decision. This was not a legal decision.
Do you think the HEROES Act did not give the President the authority to spend $1 trillion of the people's money, because in 2022, when I'm guessing most people believe COVID was pretty much over, and that's when he took this action. It was the exact right move today.
If there was a Republican president, do you think there would be potentially a student loan forgiveness plan if that could go through, if there was another president in there?
The Republican Secretary of Education did that. The Republican under President Trump, the Secretary of Education did invoke that specific section. It was followed up by President Biden's Secretary of Education. You make exactly the right point.
They did not, under the Trump administration, they did not move to eliminate student debt. They voted to suspend, they used that form to delay repayment of the loan. They did not forgive the loan. They delayed the repayment of the loan so people could get through that emergency.
Now you're agreeing with my point. My point says, the statute says the power to waive or modify. There they modified. In this situation, they waived it.
All right, we're going to have to cut this off. Unfortunately, we could talk about this all day, and there were several other major decisions made this week, but we are out of time. Butch Hollowell and Jamie Roe, thank you both for joining us today.